Bring it up now if you want me.
Okay.
Well,
I will
welcome.
share the screen.
Glad to have you all here. Are all of you at Kendal Oberlin? I know Lynn is. No.
Now, Kendall at home.
Okay. I mean, Kendal home. That's right. Sorry about that. So this will be our second one, focused on spirituality, well-being, and the wholeness of life. I'm interested in all three. Last week, I tried to do an overview of each one of those: spirituality and well-being and wholeness. And I made the declaration that I'm not really dealing with things like diet, exercise, stuff like that. That's also a part of the whole wellness phenomenon. I figure there are other people, we get enough of that. So I'm really trying to look at it more from the spirituality perspective. And what I've done again today is just bring in some, in many cases, loaded, in my estimation, quotations. And we're a small enough group now, and we're all together. So maybe after we look at each one of these, we can just have a conversation. And if we only get through half the stuff that I bring to us as a possibility today, we'll just do it next week. So there's no urgency in me getting through whatever agenda I think I've got. So if you want to go to the next slide, Lynn, we'll just jump in. All right, so two quotations here, both from friends of mine. Both happen to be Catholic, and I'm a lifelong Quaker, so I'm going to be doing spirituality from a Quaker perspective, because that's what I know best. But I'm also willing to admit that I hang out with Catholics a lot, and really even in the interfaith thing, so I'd like to drag in some of that as well. Elia Delio, I mentioned last week, is a Franciscan. She's a scientist as well as a theologian, so I really like the combination. She works a lot with evolution and how that fits into a Christian, and I would say larger spiritual framework. She certainly does not limit herself to Christianity, although that's her base. And I would like to share this because I find what she brings to me challenging, and it's refreshing. So what I wanted to do in the first 2 or 3 slides is focus on love, and I want to talk about it as the process of wholeness that implicates well-being and in some ways is sourced in spirituality. So she writes, evolution unveils a depth of integrated wholeness that is open to more unity, centricity, and consciousness. Love is not sheer emotion or simply a dopaminergic surge in the limbic system. It is much more deeply embedded in the fabric of the universe. Love is the integrated energy field. And my yellow just indicates I'm really intrigued by that notion. Love is the integrated energy field, the center of all centers, the whole of every whole, that makes each whole desire more wholeness. And if I were going to do a longer seminar, I would say, well, the other side of the love coin is fear. And fear is fragmenting and disintegration. Notice how that is the opposite of integrity or integration or wholeness, disintegration. So fear separates, makes us feel alone, scared. It makes us aware of our ego, very conscious of ourselves. So I see love as the antithesis of fear, and I really see well-being as a quest for love that's often impacted by our fears. And we could talk about fears, probably, at least I could the rest of the day. So I like the fact that she sees God as love, or love is the core of the universe. It's the integrated energy field. So I would throw that out, and then let's do the second quotation, and then we'll just make the whole conversation available to all of us and not have me just yipping along. And I'll say, by the way, I'm happy to have Sammy Leffler along with us. Sammy is a student in one of my classes, and she brings the average age of this group down. So I'm always delighted to hang out with young folks, and it's to Sammy's credit. She's only in her first year in college with us, and to have her interested in this and thinking about these, I welcome her comments as well. The second quotation is from a friend of mine who actually will be on my campus from Denver, Colorado. He'll be flying into Cleveland in February to do some things. He's written a wonderful book called Sophia, which is the Greek word for wisdom, in which he proclaims good news. Believe it. Believe what? In a word, that one is loved, that one belongs to the world, and that human life has meaning and purpose in the vast cosmos. That's good news. That you're loved, that you belong to the world, and life has meaning and purpose. So let me just step back and see how you might leverage these thoughts as you begin to think along with me about wholeness, implicating also well-being. So comments, questions? Yeah. Norma?
If you could go back to that slide, what caught me by surprise, I don't know, it just opened a new pathway of my thinking, is that human life has meaning and purpose in the vast cosmos. I guess I always thought human life was a serendipitous happening, that molecules came together and evolution kicked in. But to see it saying it's part of a plan, that we are planned, to me is very moving.
Yeah, I can imagine my friend Ilya, and I had lunch with her about, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or a month. I can imagine her saying, yep, Norma, you were designed by love, which is a cool way to talk about God, or the Holy One in my estimation. You were made for love. Others, questions? You may have questions more than you have answers. Well, I like the idea of love as an energy. And we get at that when we think about our word passion, which is rooted in the Latin word passion, or eros, which is the Greek version of passion. Unfortunately, our culture lets eros be only sex and sexy, where it really means drive and passion and that kind of thing. I mean, eros got us out of bed this morning, or we'd still be there. Okay, let's go to the next one then. Those of you who are Quakers ought to groove on this one. This is for the home team. How's that? I'm a lifelong Quaker. What's coming up is a quotation from Thomas Kelly. I entitled this slide, "The Love Field," this energy thing that Delio talked about. And I'm talking about this love field is actually home. And Thomas Kelly, probably if you're a Quaker, you know his book, Testament of Devotion, maybe my favorite Quaker book. Thomas Kelly actually lived in Ohio and Wilmington for quite a long time. Was a learned person, but then had experiences that I would say deepened his spirituality. And this book really originates out of the 1930s and the whole Nazi period, and some work in Reconstruction that Kelly was involved with. But this is very early on in the book, and it's a quotation from really the 13th century, or it's a takeoff from the 13th century Dominican Meister Eckhart. And so I love this. So I figure, why not work with something I love, since that's what it's about. Deep within us all, there is an amazing inner sanctuary of the soul, a holy place, a divine center, a speaking voice to which we may continuously return. Eternity is at our hearts, pressing upon our time-torn lives, warming us with intimations of an astounding destiny, calling us home unto itself. Yielding to these persuasions, gladly committing ourselves in body and soul, utterly and completely to the light within, is the beginning of true life. It is our dynamic center, a creative life that presses to birth within each of us. I love those words. And then we'll just add the second piece, which comes much later in Kelly's book. The Society of Friends, that's the same group as we call Quakers, for those who don't know. If the Society of Friends has anything to say, it lies in this region primarily. Life is meant to be lived from a center, a divine center. Each one of us can live such a life of amazing power and peace and serenity, of integration and confidence and simplified multiplicity on one condition, that is, if we really want to. I never met Kelly. He died before I was born. I'd love to meet him, but I really just resonate with that. And where he finishes that second quotation suggests to me that there is a great deal, at least in our lives, available to us if we really want to. Not everything. I spend a lot of time hanging out with coaches on my campus, and the line I always hear from them is, control what you can control. Well, I think this is Kelly's spiritual version of that. There are a lot of things that we can do that if we really want to. So let me just set up a conversation. I hope there's a conversation. I'm sure if you're a Quaker, and I know Lynn is, the others I don't know, I'm sorry. But
No, I'm not.
think,
I'm not a Quaker.
all right. Well, you count though. You work for the Quaker
I've
place.
just worn off on me over all these
That's right.
years.
You hang out with us long enough, you know. It's like
That's right.
my Quaker friends think I'm crypto Catholic, so
I don't.
I'm good with that.
Just speak.
But I think the key to well-being is learning to know the center and to live in and from the center. This amazing inner sanctuary of the soul. I'm back in the first quotation. And he uses 4 different ways to define that. It's an amazing inner sanctuary of the soul. It's a holy place, a divine center, and a speaking voice. We have access to it, and we can live from it. And if we can learn to be centered, as we Quakers would talk about it, and I think there's a lot about Kendal that is concerned with how do we help people at that particular stage and age in life? How do we help them continue to be centered in the process of living out the rest of their lives? We all know that physical health is not a guarantee all the way.
I was just trying to read the green.
But we can continue to be centered. So comments, questions,
I actually have a question.
please, Sammy.
So being a Quaker is kind of like a new term to me. Can you like explain that a little bit? Like what the values of being a Quaker are?
Well, I could, as probably others could. I see Nancy Finks join, she could too. Quakers originated in 17th century England as part of the reforming movement that was going on for more than a century in Europe and in England. Quakerism continued to be a spin out of the Anglican Church, which had broken from the Roman Catholic Church in the 16th century. And within that group of Anglicans, Church of England, there were a number of people who wanted to take the Reformation even further. And they came to be known as the Puritans because they wanted to further purify the Church of England from some of the stuff that they still saw there, a hierarchy, a focus on male clergy. Quakers have this radical democratic sense. So the fact that we're all panelists, it makes Quaker perfect sense because there's a radical sense of equality. Women could have immediate access to the divinity, just like guys in the 17th century. Women could speak, women could be involved in ministry. At our best, we're not racist, we're not sexist, we're not any of that kind of stuff. Obviously, we're human, so some of us don't quite measure up, and so we're work in progress. And I would say, Sammy, since you're part of my class and the others could guess, that's really the way I try to teach.
Yeah.
Is everybody's voices not
Yeah.
only allowed, but encouraged, etc. It's a
Very
pretty
good.
democratic situation.
Yeah. I really like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever talked to any Quakers before. So
Yeah,
whenever you
well-
say it in class, I'm kind of like, what is that?
Mhm. It
So-
is one of those things, Sammy, that this organization, we espouse those Quaker values as a part of our work. And I'm not a Quaker, but I've been here for 18 years. And so those Quaker values are very central to hopefully the way in which we care for members. They apply to our governance. So Alan serves on the board, and it's a very different, if you've ever served on a nonprofit board or worked with a board, it's usually run by Robert's Rules of Order. I'm not sure who Roberts is, but in this arena, we really don't move decisions forward without having agreement from all of the board members and really an understanding as we make the next steps that we're doing that in unison, and doesn't always mean that everyone agrees. There are ways in which people can step aside in order for something to move forward, but by and large, in the years I've been here, there's only been one time when I think we haven't been able to move something forward because someone felt, that it wasn't something they could support. But for the most part, you see a group of people really come together and work towards the common good and align in order to move things forward. It's a very unique experience and takes some practice.
Mhm.
To get
Sammy,
there.
Yeah.
this is Lynn Cope, and I'd like to share. As a Quaker that was hauled across the snow in her basket, the first Quaker meeting when I was an infant, again, I was born that way. What always has impressed me is the fact that equality was a huge thing for women and girl children my
Yeah.
entire life. And then when we moved to Kansas, and I heard the prairie stories of my ancestors that talked with the natives and bought land from the natives, traded livestock with the natives, and had peace with the natives. It's just so stunningly different than what the
Yeah.
rest of culture did. And so for me, it was a no-brainer to stay a friend all of my life. Friend meaning Quaker.
Yeah. That's so like you grew up like not knowing anything different than equality for like everyone.
For everyone.
Wow.
And it didn't matter your age either. If you had
Yeah.
a good idea and you could put that on the table, you could be considered just as well as anybody else.
I love that. I think
Well,
that's
you-
cool.
Good. I'm
Great.
glad.
That's great.
And Alan can add to that also, but that's been my experience my whole life, and I'm getting old now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. And so different, I feel like, than like what's kind of or like what's been taught like in the past, I guess, what a lot of people know.
Yeah, it's one good way of being Christian and spiritual. Not the only way, but it's a good way.
Mhm.
So, and I might just comment in that second quotation, we're called the Society of Friends, technically the Religious Society of Friends. And early friends took it from John's gospel, where Jesus says to the disciples, I don't call you slaves or servants anymore. I call you friends. And I loved it when I learned Greek, and that Greek word for friend is actually one of the Greek words for love. Philos, Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. So I keep saying, well, we really should change our name from the Religious Society of Friends to the Society of Lovers. Then we would grow. But Quakers are probably a little too reticent, you know. There's still fear in us to be bold, although the early Quakers were pretty bold. But 2 or 3 more things I'd like to pick out of the Kelly thing. Actually, I once did a whole day seminar on that first quotation. That was the only thing we did the whole day, was work with that. And there's more than enough there. But I love the fact that eternity is at heart, and that there is an astounding destiny to which we're all being called. And I take that as a statement of hope, and I'm going to hang on to that one till the bitter end, until I lose my mind or lose my life. It's like, well, I'm on the way. I'm not predestined, but there's a destiny. And the destiny, if she's already gone, the destiny is to be fully involved in the love that created me. So in that sense, it's like a circle. Love designed me. There's a destiny will bring me back fully into the love. And I don't know what will be post-mortem. Yeah, I see a hand up. You want to jump in there, Eric?
Yes, I do.
Please.
Kathy and I are Roman Catholics.
Oh, good.
And, a lot of what you put on the screen in terms of the quotes. One is loved. We belong to the world. We are loved. God is love. There's scripture passages that would support this, Christian, scripture passages that would support that. And I particularly liked the idea there's a holy place, a divine center deep within us, a speaking voice to which we may continuously return. That speaking voice is from a Catholic point of view would be the Trinity, speaking to you, the Holy Spirit speaking to you from your spirit, from your soul, an interior voice that it sounds, I think Quakers and Catholics would quickly agree on that point.
Yeah.
That there is this voice within you, and one needs to pay attention to that.
Right. And my line in these 4 sessions is to say it's there, and indeed, if we become aware of it, if we pay attention and try to live a centered life instead of, notice what I'm going to do, center is really Latin word. Our word eccentric, you put the EC or on the front of it, means I'm away from the center. So literally, if you're an eccentric person, you're living off center or out of balance. I would say some form of sickness, dis-ease, if you will. And so I love to play some word games like that, but it makes it really clear. Being centered is giving me the possibility of being integrated, which is the core of wholeness. And if I'm eccentric, away from the center, then I'm disintegrating. I'm coming apart. Life is in shambles. It makes no sense. There's no purpose, which is dis-ease.
Which could equal sin.
Sin is often the way we say that's what happened to us. I don't know that we need a devil to account for it. I'm sufficient by myself. So the Jewish tradition says there are 2 wills in us, one towards the good and one away from the good. And we need to pay attention to the one that brings us into the center. So, and the center is dynamic. That's what I love. And that's why it fits with Delio so nice. It's evolving, it's dynamic. It's energy. And fear distorts that. Fear puts us out of time, if you will. So living a spiritual life that's well and whole is like being in time, if you think about it musically. There's harmony as opposed to dissonance. And fear is what distorts time. All right, Lynn, let's pop over to the next one. Eric, you should be good. So far, I've gone 2 Catholics and 1 Quaker. But there are 1 billion of you in the world. There aren't so many of us Quakers.
Well, I'm not sure how many practicing Catholics there are.
Yeah, but you'll notice I'll select my Catholic authors carefully. And there's some Quakers I probably won't quote either. How's that? Equal opportunity offender I am. Here I'm talking about love as the center. I'm going back to Delio. She really intrigues me. She says, God lives deep within us as the center of love, but we are often blind to the center and drawn by the little gods of power, success, status, and wealth, everything we create for ourselves. And I don't know whether I thought, well, is this a slide that I do with people of some age, like older people, kind of like me, or is it only Sammy's problem? And I think, no, there are a lot of us who are still wrestling with these kinds of issues. I do think so.
Yes.
And then the other quotation from Delio, I really like this one. Obviously, there's some yellow here. Love lies in persons, not ideas. Love is not a concept, but a powerful, transforming energy that heals, reconciles, unites, and makes whole. Love draws together, heart to heart, center to center. Love is not what God does. Love is what God is. Love is the goodness of God. And I like the idea that love's not a concept. It's not an idea, but it's an energy. And if we can become part of a group that has this also as our quest, as a good Quaker group would be, or a good Catholic group would be, then we're trying to unite our center with the center of other people and to be together a centered group. That's to be a corporate body. The New Testament calls it the body of Christ, the oneness of us all. And I would join Delio, and I'm fairly confident Kelly would be in the same place to say, I think we are all one. And we just, in our illusion, see ourselves and function as individuals. And probably my favorite Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, says, part of the task of spirituality is to unmask the illusion of our separateness. And I really like that. Part of the task of spirituality is to unmask the illusion of our separateness. And I think love is how we do it. Notice the verbs there: heals, reconciles, unites, makes whole. That's the work of love. Comments, questions? Sammy's used to me doing it this way. When you experience, let me ask a question. When you all experience love, what is the experience? When you say, "Oh, I was loved," what are you affirming?
A gift.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine, Sammy. Go ahead.
Sammy and then Lynn?
I feel like I feel like I'm truly cared about when someone says that they love me. I feel
Okay.
cared for.
Mhm. Lynn?
I think it's a gift,
Okay.
something to be valued.
I feel love when I care for someone.
Okay.
It can be an animal, a rescued little critter.
Mhm.
that I bring back to health and then turn loose.
Mhm.
It
And
just
I'm
makes
not-
me
Yeah, I think the thing I'm not surprised by is at least Sammy and Lynn use the language of feeling. And a gift is probably something that will make Lynn feel good, feel welcome, feel needed or whatever. So it typically is, and I think that's why the quotation says love is an energy and not just a concept.
Mhm.
We typically feel loved rather than think love. Even for somebody like me who tends to be a thinker, I feel love.
Mhm.
So that's what I really enjoy that part of it.
It's
I think
being
it gives you that
accepted.
sense of being valued, you know.
Valued,
it's-
belonging, one of the
Mhm.
core things. Eric?
It's being accepted as we are, warts and
Okay.
all. No, to me, that's a big part of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said that, Eric, I was thinking, yeah, some of us are so bent on performing to try to get to be loved
Absolutely.
that if we're really accepted for who we are, then we don't have to perform anymore.
Or put up false fake fronts,
Exactly.
put on
Exactly.
a mask, put on a face to meet the faces that you meet.
And wouldn't you say that you can only be well if you're allowed to be yourself? It's hard to be well trying to be somebody else.
Okay.
All right, Lynn, let's go to the next one. All right, so I'm going to chase well-being a little further here. This comes from Martin Seligman, who teaches at Penn in the Philadelphia area in his book Flourish. He's probably appropriately seen as maybe the founding figure for what's known now as positive psychology, which I must admit I enjoy that. Positive psychology really looks at what makes people well rather than trying to figure out what makes people sick. Obviously, all of us have some issues, but what makes people well? And Seligman, in all the research he's done, whether it's at West Point, that interesting place for Quakers to deal with, to all sorts of places he's done this research. So it's a fairly long period of research, and so it's very evidence-based. And he posits 5 aspects of well-being. So I'm going to dig in today, and it's going to move on into next week as well. These 5 aspects of well-being: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And he feels like if we can have good things going for us on all those counts, then we're going to be in pretty good shape. Positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. So I wanted to list those, and now I want to do a little something with each one to fill them out a bit. And given the shortness of our time, we're going to have to fill in the blanks on our own, or you all can get together again offline and have more conversation. So Lynn, let's go to the next slide. So there's the first one, positive emotions. I'm going to quote a little more from Seligman's book. It's a really intriguing book. He says, your mood is determined by whatever you think about. That sounds so easy to say, and yet if you begin to unpack it, it's like, oh. So if I were doing this with Sammy in her class, I would say, do you think that's really true? Your mood's determined by what you're thinking about? Yeah. And the first thing I would assume is they've never thought about it. So by asking the question, I invite them to start thinking about it, which is what I'm doing to all of you. And the second question that occurs to me is, Does that mean if I change what I think about, my mood could change? Lynn's smiling. What do you think, Lynn?
I'm agreeing with everything. It's absolutely true. And when
Yeah.
you're helping someone else and you can help them change their attitude or what they're thinking about, they feel better.
Yeah. And do you think this is an example of what Kelly meant about, well, if you want to, you can?
I think so. I think it's much more clearer than Kelly's, actually.
It is. But this really puts the rubber to the road to say, do you know your mood reflects what you're thinking about?
Mhm.
If you don't like it, why don't you start thinking about something else?
But you have to have the wherewithal to do that.
You have to have the wherewithal and maybe some support. Well, that begins to implicate the relationships, which is coming up next. Or in my world where Sammy and I are together a lot, it's like, oh, that's a function of community. And I think that's one of the things that Kendal Home continues to give some attention to. And this is probably one aspect of what giving attention to it looks like. And yet some people live as if they're obsessed by things they're thinking about. Isn't obsession a form of attachment or even addiction to what I'm thinking about?
I think I
It's-
never really thought of it like that, but sometimes you do encounter people that just can't let something go, right?
Exactly.
That they are obsessed with it, and that
Exactly.
even though we'd like to think we control the things that we think about or how it impacts our mood or
Mhm.
our perspective on things, you can easily, I'm sure all of us can think of someone that we know that, obsesses about something to the point that, maybe it impacts their quality of life to some
Mhm.
degree.
But we could change the title of this slide from positive emotions to negative emotions.
Mhm.
And a lot of people will have a lot more to say about that.
Yeah.
And what does it make them feel? Sick, grumpy, not well, complaining. That's what we get, is complaining. Whether it's the weather, it's like anything will do.
Just thinking of people that, I was just talking to someone who's facing a very difficult diagnosis, and how I can't help thinking how that must be something you would obsess about and think about a lot, the uncertainty, not yet knowing what lies ahead. And
Exactly.
it seems easy to say, well, think about something else,
It
unless
is.
you're that person. Probably very difficult to think about anything but that.
In the moment,
Right,
absolutely.
right.
But to be able not to think about anything else is to put yourself in bondage.
Right, right.
And so part of what I am hoping that we're doing is we're actually learning this stuff and we can begin practicing it. And if we don't practice it, it's nothing other than some knowledge. And I mean, I've done quite a bit in terms of performance, and people perform. I'm talking about whether it's basketball or music. High performers train themselves to a different default or habitual place than poor performers. And so if I can learn to live well and with wholeness now, then when I get into some pickle where I get the diagnosis I don't like, or when I get the opportunity maybe even to do hospice on my way to death, I can die well. I don't think I'll probably die healthy, which is why I'm wanting to do it in terms of well-being and not just physical health. Because at our age and stage, many of us will start struggling with little issues or bigger issues. And then finally, a big issue. But my goal, if I have my mind, is to die well. And I don't know how else to prepare for that except on these kinds of things. So that's really my presupposition. And I'm going to be really happy to get these first two out of the way and get to relationships, because that's really a key for me. I know on my own, I'm probably going to be a disaster. So let's work through this, and we may have time for one more slide, or we might call it a day after this, and we'll see where we are. Just another piece from Seligman about positive emotions. It's subjective, it's pleasant, pleasure, satisfaction, comfort, warmth, pride, gratitude, a present tense assessment. So if you ask somebody how you're feeling, you're asking about the mood, and it's always a present tense assessment. And then I want to bring these in. This is probably a whole course, Sammy, in the religion department. The Buddhists list 5 what they call limitless qualities. And I think these fit in what I would mean by positive emotions, or these lead to positive emotions, which leads to well-being and wholeness. So one limitless quality is loving kindness. In other words, there's always more. I think of Lynn's word about love as a gift. This is generosity on steroids. Loving kindness can never be totally spent or used up. A second one they identify is compassion. The third one is joy. And the fourth one is equanimity, which is a fancy word. I probably wouldn't presume all your classmates, Sammy, would know that one. It really means calm, balanced, ease with life and ease with things. So the thing that I find these offering me is, if I could cultivate those, if I could live more and more out of these, the world would be better, others will be well served, and I will be likely much more on the scale of positive emotion than on the scale of negative emotions. Life will be experienced better on myself. And I think for me, this is the spiritual paradox that Christianity knows, that Buddhism knows, and probably every major religious tradition. That love gets better and better the more you give. It's paradoxical. And that's probably true of the good life. And it's hard to trust that truth. And especially for those of us who grew up with what my friend Parker Palmer, a Quaker, calls a scarcity model of the world. I'm afraid there won't be enough, and it makes me greedy and selfish. So let me scoot back. I can't step back, and see what you all think about that slide. Comments, questions?
Looks like Eric has his. Eric, do you have your hand up? There's a little hand on your screen.
Yeah, there was something that was, I'm still, going back to positive emotions. Your mood is determined by what you think about that question. And when we were there, I was thinking something that I've often find very disturbing, and I suspect others of you do too, is the current state of our politics. And I'm in the habit of looking at the New York Times online every day. And there's a lot of thoughtful stuff in there, but it's, a lot of it's upsetting. And if you dwell on it, it's hard to stop thinking about it.
Absolutely.
It's a difficult one. And things don't seem to change for the better. In fact, presently, I think they're getting worse. And I think no matter which camp one falls in the blue or the red camp at this point. I think both sides would agree on that things are getting worse from both perspectives. So do you have anything more to say about that?
Well, my flip comment is, Eric, you should be like me. I start with the sports page and not the front page. So I care less about the Browns than I do the world. So much easier to cope with. So that's my flip comment. My serious comment is, yeah, I would agree with you. But I think my real choice is basically to be grumpy about it, to the other extreme of being grumpy is just give up on it. Despair. And Quakers and good Catholics, that despair is not the option, because love is at the heart of it. And hope is always hooked to love. And so what I do is read the news. I do the New York Times online as well. It is depressing, and that leads to despair. But I also, for instance, with the bill that Biden just, the infrastructure, let's hope it really goes somewhere. But I delighted in seeing the picture of Diane Randall, who's the honcho of this Quaker lobby group in DC called Friends Committee on National Legislation. I was delighted to see her pictured with Jim Wallace, an evangelical Christian leader who's worked for social justice forever, and a congresswoman. And I thought, they don't give up.
Jim Wallace has a book called God's Politics.
Yes, he does. And he's if anybody's seen enough to want to throw his hands up, and he doesn't do it necessarily because he hoped for Trump or hopes for Biden or whoever else is next, but it's his hope in the God who is the designer of love in the beginning, and the hope at the end. That's where my spirituality kicks in. I can do it in Christian language, or I can do it in Buddhist language. I don't really care. So that's my serious answer. Is I probably can't change one thing in Washington, but I've got a chance with Sammy and 25 others in that hour tomorrow. And if I can help any one of those, or ideally all of them, be better and do better and believe half of what we're talking about this afternoon, that's my best I can give the world on my way.
It's good.
And I hope I'm doing it out of love. I tell them, I've got enough money now. I'm not even doing it for money. I'm doing it because of Sammy and those people. And it's my version of planting trees. I won't even see them grow up and bear fruit. I don't care. But she might have my, 2 grandkids here in town in some situation, and I want her doing that to them. Because Sammy and they may live to 2100, if you can imagine that. Holy cow. So that's my long answer. And it's an answer out of love and from the center of who I am. And that's why the Browns, I don't care about them ultimately. It's a fun distraction.
Only we could plant more of those seeds, right?
We could. Well, I see 3:00 is just 1 minute away. Maybe we could ask for any parting shots, and then we'll pick it up here right after positive emotions the next time.
That's good. Thank you all. Thanks for allowing me to move you in as panelists so we could see each other and have conversations a little easier.
Indeed.
Thank you,
Any
Alan.
other parting shots here?
It was good.
Well, thank you.
Very good.
Well, I look forward to doing it again. If you all want to join me again next Tuesday, and Sammy, I'm hoping you'll join us as well.
Of course, I'll be there.
She's not getting extra credit. It's just all the credit she gets from hanging out with
She's
people like
striving
us.
for that A+. Come on.
She'll do all right. She'll do all
I just
right on
find
her
it
own.
interesting.
She'll do all
Well,
right on her own.
we're grateful to have you with us, Sammy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone, for joining
you
us.
all in a
We'll
week.
see you again next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lynn, for inviting me in.
Oh, you're welcome. Sending lots of love to everyone.